And can I just take this opportunity to thank you all very much for being here with us today. I find some of the answers bizarre, to be very, very honest, to be very, very frank. And I just want to say maybe at the outset that the clear agenda for today are these secret payments, how they came about, how they were covered up, how this committee was deceived in terms of those payments, how the government was deceived. And that's all. I'm very mindful of the fact that over the last 3 years we have done a huge amount of work, all of this committee have, on funding the future of good public broadcasting. And every time, and Mr. Lynch, you were in here in front of us on numerous occasions, every time the main focus of your discussion and your argument and your presentation coming in here was the financial constraints of RTE. So it is just really shocking, and I have to say I'm really still struggling after everything I've heard over the last 3 hours to come to terms with it. If I could begin with you, Mr. Lynch, can I ask you who negotiated Patrick Kieltys' new contract for the Late Late Show?
So that would be the CFO with legal advice and then input from the Director of Content.
Is there anybody here of the executive can enlighten us about that contract and about that deal?
I negotiated the deal, yes.
Okay. And can I ask you, have the board sight of what that deal is and what the makeup of that deal is?
No, I don't think so.
Well, the board, the deal was discussed with the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in the chair of the board. Do you mean the executive board or?
So I mean, to begin with, who negotiated the deal of the executive board, naturally, with Mr. Kielty?
So it was me, the CFO. I negotiated the deal.
Okay. And have you made the board or just the chair aware of what that deal is?
No, I've made the chair of the board aware of the deal.
And are you satisfied with that deal, Chair?
Well, that deal still has to come before the audit and or the remuneration committee of the board.
And can I ask you, when will that deal, I know it was touched on here, when will that deal be made public? Because I think it's in the public interest now for the future of the Late Late Show even, as an entity, what that deal comprises of. When will that be made public? Mr. Lynch, I suppose you're here as DG.
So yeah, there's two parties to that deal. So it will depend on the other party.
Okay, well, how soon do you think you can do that? I'm sure you can have a conversation with that other party tomorrow. How soon can you make this committee and the public aware of what that deal comprises of? Because I did hear Mr. Kielty's response yesterday, and I know he's not here to answer from himself. It was far from satisfactory. But I'm asking you, as the people who negotiated that deal, when will you make this committee and how soon can you make this committee, assuming that the other party is agreeable to that also, which they should be?
Yeah, so if Mr. Kielty is satisfied with it, we can then publish it.
Can I just add to that it still has to come before the remuneration committee?
And how soon are they going to be meeting, Ms. O'Reilly?
Friday.
On Friday, okay. So all things going well, there's no reason why this committee can't be fully informed of this as early as Friday evening, Monday morning at the latest. Is that a fair assumption?
If Mr. Kielty is...
Okay, well, I think we're agreeing to that, assuming that everybody goes along with it, and if somebody is not in agreement with that, I would ask you that you would inform the committee of that, okay? I find it extraordinary, and perhaps there's more to go on this, that nobody of the executive here today, and we haven't had the opportunity to go through each and every one of you, can answer the very straightforward question of NK management and how many of your talent base that company actually represents, because I'm not a member of the executive or the board. To my mind, from what I'm hearing, Mr. Lynch, it is far more than 4 or 5. Can I ask you, of the executive board, okay, because my biggest concern is here, nobody seems to know, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing on the executive, okay? Can I ask you, Mr. Comey, have you any idea how many of the star talent base, we'll say within RT, are dealt with and represented by NK management?
Well, I can say, like Adrian said, I think of the top 10, I think it's in and around 4 or 5. The broad, the beyond that.
No, I'm asking broadly in RT. There surely, if somebody knows how many come in on behalf of the stars of the RTE to negotiate on their behalf?
Just to say, I play no hand, act or part in negotiating contracts with talent. I have nothing to do with it, but it is, you can see in the
You're head of strategy,
I
okay,
agree,
so
I agree.
surely you should know or would have an idea, surely that comes up at executive meetings. Because he's obviously a
okay.
big player within RTE. How many, and maybe you can't answer the question,
don't
you
know
can't,
exactly,
that's fine.
but
You don't.
it's fair to say it's a considerable number, and we can provide that to you.
Okay. Can I ask you, CFO, if you know?
I don't know the exact figure, no.
Okay.
Can I just clarify, sorry, I thought you were talking about the top 10, that's why I was
No,
saying
I
4 or
want to go
5.
much broader than that, okay? Geraldine?
I have no reason to know, but I'd say it is definitely double figures. Yeah.
But we don't know. And Adrian, you don't know either,
Yeah, I would say it's probably 10 or 11.
in its entirety?
In its entirety, in RTE.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. When can you furnish us with that detail? Because I think that's hugely important. He's a very major
Yeah.
key player in all of this, and we haven't got to that yet.
Oh, yeah.
But
We
how
give you
soon
that
can you give us that
immediately.
information?
Yeah, we give you that immediately. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask one question, Chair? Justin?
We'll get to you.
Yeah, okay.
I'll give you that at the end. Siún, I'm going to ask you a question. What level of delegation do the board give to the DG in relation to the negotiations and contracts for somebody like Mr. Kielty who's coming in? And was there any sort of level of reporting requirements made by the board? We'll say in this new contract that's coming up.
Yeah, so the process, apart from the Director General's own contract, the process is for the executives themselves to run, and so when contracts, whether it's for talent or any other contract, are being negotiated, there is a system that they operate in there in terms of talent.
My question is, what part does the board play? Or, I mean, what's the
So the board-
conversation, or how
yeah,
often is it?
Yeah, so within the remit of the subcommittee of the board, the remuneration committee, there's an onus on the DG to bring forward anything in relation to top talent and
Okay, so I'm going to be specific, okay? Because let's move forward, and we're talking about the new presenter of the Late Late Show.
Okay.
What level of input would the board have had in, being aware of or sending the executive off to negotiate that deal, coming back and reporting? As you say, you're coming back on there. That's to be approved, we'll say, on Friday by your own board. What's the input there that the board have on those? Do you give them any requirements, any set time frame to do it, any limitations on what can be achieved, or I suppose how far the deal can go?
well, no, we don't, is the answer
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in other words, the executive can do what they like, go as far as they like with the negotiations or with the deal, and come back to you, and you literally have to either agree to it or disagree.
Yes, that is the way it
And
is
your first
currently.
experience, I suppose, of that would be on Friday when this new deal is
Yeah.
to come back. Okay, that's fair enough. Robert, I'm going to come to you next, because you haven't had an opportunity to be part of this conversation, and I'm very glad to see you here today, and I have a sense. Can I ask you, how long have you been on the board of RT?
2018.
And you're there as?
I'm there as a staff representative, so I have to go through an election.
Yeah.
So I succeeded, excuse me, Angus McGreena. And then I served out the rest of Angus's term, and then I was re-elected unopposed for a second term, which ends in November of next year.
Okay, so you're there since 2018. Can I ask you, how would you describe the relationship of the board with the executive?
It's a working relationship.
Is it an open one? Is there a good relationship? Is there many conversations about how things are operating within RT?
Yes, the members of the executive will present before the board on different issues as they arise in the normal course of business. We have more detailed engagement on the Audit and Risk Committee, of which I'm a member, with the Chief Financial Officer, with Richard Collins. So, yes, the operation and the interaction between the executive and the board is a working relationship and is a functioning working relationship.
Can I ask you
Notwithstanding what we've seen emerge over the course of the last couple of months.
Can I ask you how would, if the board there was good interaction and there was good openness and transparency, how could something like this have gone on for years without the board being aware?
Well, the first opportunity...
What's your explanation for that?
Well, my explanation of it is that the first time this surfaced as a point of inquiry, right? The first time this surfaced was when the auditors uncovered 2 transactions about which they had questions. And they came to Anne as Chair of Audit and Risk, alerted to that, came to the scheduled Audit and Risk committee meeting where they briefed us in more detail about it. We took the actions that we did, which you know about now. So from that narrow perspective, in terms of what went on, if that's what you're referring to these 2 transactions and everything that has arisen from them, like the functioning of the board was, dare I say it, quite efficient in pushing this on to its conclusion, which was the publication of that report on the 16th of December to us, the Audit and Risk Committee. We gave it to the full board with recommendations for the full board meeting the following Monday. And here we are a week later. So, you know, from that narrow perspective, I mean, if you're talking about something going back years, could you be a little bit more specific? Are you talking about this kind of wider cultural issues that has been raised in the course of today's questionings? Are we talking about the specific, everything that has flown from and emerged from these 2 transactions, which was the beginning of all of this? Because if it's just about those 2 transactions, I'm very satisfied, and I'll stand over
Okay,
the
well
actions
then
that
go
we
your first
took.
option, the broader perspective on all this.
So if you're talking about cultural issues, I have to agree with what the Chair said earlier in relating the conversation that she had with Kevin Backhurst, the incoming Director General. I mean, this is a personal view, but I know that it would be the view of many members of staff. People feel uncomfortable with very high salaries going to presenters. People are very aware, and again, this is my view, our industry is changing at lightning speed, right? RTE has gone from an organisation where perhaps 2/3 of the revenue was commercial and 1/3 came from the licence fee, to now less than half of our income comes from commercial. Most of it, the majority of our funding, comes from the licence fee. Now, I think that has implications. We are becoming more of a public service broadcaster. We're still operating under an act where we are dual funded, but the industry that underpins that act has left that framework that we have to operate under. You know, it's almost obsolete. And I think it's incumbent on us to consider that as the industry that we're working in changes, that we have to rethink that relationship, and we have to consider whether or not, as we become more of a public service funded broadcaster, that the kind of commercial relationships that were part of the old model need to be looked at again. Now, quite what the bar is, or somebody asked, I think it was Senator Byrne asked, should anybody be paid more than the Taoiseach? But they're exactly the type of questions that we have to engage with, and they're the type of questions which no doubt will come up as part of this cultural review. And I know that many staff, they're actually welcoming this cultural and governance review, and they expect to make a very full input into that, and I'll be bringing their views as well at board level as that review gets underway.
Okay. Adrian, you wanted to say something on my questions?
Just earlier, you just brought up one point around clarifications around the payments, and I was wondering, because obviously we're here today and very happy to answer any question that hasn't been answered. So is there a question around the payments that we can clarify or give you more information on?